Could you just give me a little bit of time to figure out how I feel about you writing an article about me being in here?
So this guy starts blogging about the Russian mob. Well, the Russian mob clearly has connections. It's time to get into secrets about how inmates really think. Orange is the New Black is one of the best shows about low and minimum security prison. There's a lot of realism in here and a lot of stuff that's just movie magic, so we'll talk about both as we go through the show together. I was a commercial pilot and I flew marijuana around the country in a private airplane. I was convicted in the biggest drug conspiracy in Washington state history, and I did time in prisons just like this. Orange is the New Black brings back vivid memories. There's secret nuggets tucked away in every scene. Unless you've spent years in prison, you're gonna miss a lot of the best stuff in this show. Stick around to the end of the show and I'm gonna rate this episode on prison realism. Also, leave any comments asking why or what prisoners were thinking when they did things. First, let's set the scene. There is a scandal going on in the prison because a cell phone photo has been discovered online linking a cell phone back to the prison, and also there's an election going on basically for representatives or shot callers within the prison.
A colleague of mine emailed that to me this morning. Apparently it was posted on prisonpoon.com labeled as Litchfield Poonan.
Does your colleague often browse prisonpoon.com?
I would like to solve this problem before the warden finds out about it, Joe. Neither of us wants to see what happens if he or, God forbid, the press get a hold of this.
This is classic. So the funny thing about being in a prison is a lot of prisoners have cell phones and they have access to the outside world. They have access to social media. They send pictures out. A lot of times these pictures end up on websites. They end up on even just things like Facebook. You'll have pictures of inmates partying. When those get out to the press loves that. They're like, oh, look at this, these inmates are drinking alcohol or they snuck stuff in. There's all this contraband in prison and everyone's surprised by it. It's sensational when the press gets a hold of it. You've seen this one in Atlanta. They ran a few years back where they were having bar parties and they had all this liquor set up and inmates were sneaking out and it was this giant scandal. The real thing, the secret behind all this is this happens at every single prison camp everywhere around the country and no one cares. It only matters when pictures get leaked out or there's something sensational that the press can hold on to. And then it starts to matter at the prison because the prison gets a bad rap, the warden gets involved, and it gets just downright brutal because they're going to put the lockdown to make sure everyone knows that they are paying attention to what's happening at their prison. In reality, they're not paying attention, and all prison camps have pictures going out and have alcohol and parties, and that's just how it is. That's the nature of the beast because there is so little security, because there is a fence that people can crawl over or sometimes just step over, and they can escape when people aren't looking and bring contraband back in. So this just happens. Really funny story, actually. At a prison I was at, we had this thing called the Facebook 4, and these dudes were partying and taking pictures and posting them to Facebook. They had a Facebook account and everything, and they ended up getting discovered on Facebook, and they got an extra charge. It was a security issue. They got more time and went to a higher security prison for posting pictures on Facebook. It was sad because actually there were some pretty cool, fun guys, but it was also the stupidest thing in the entire world.
The no doubt pristine reputation of Prison Poon. But how do we know for sure that it came out of here?
Notice the tile? Either one of your inmates has a cell phone.
There's no way. My guys tore the bunks apart looking for the screwdriver.
Then it's a CO. And he's taking beaver shots of inmates so much better. The warden will love that almost as much as he loves a dick in the ass.
What the warden does.
This show's classic.
Between the Baptists and the addicts, I can't find a peaceful place to meditate on love and acceptance, which my Buddhist faith requires.
Really, we're having a real hard time praising the Lord in front of all these heathens and sinners. We need our chapel.
So this is a common occurrence, is the different religions jockeying for position in the chapel. And the reason they want the chapel is because that is a space that's designated that other people can't come into. So it's a space that you can actually kind of lock down for your own group and do what you'd like in it. And there's not a lot of spaces that you can get like that in prison. So the chapel becomes a point of contention, and all the different religions are jockeying for extra time in the chapel, and they do that through using the system of rules that's in place. And basically you have these certain religious freedoms that you can demand, and so people try to leverage those to get more time in the chapel, and they're always in, it's the chaplain's ear. They wouldn't necessarily be going to the CO here, or this is the counselor at the prison. They would be going to the chaplain of the prison, who's kind of in charge of this stuff.
Mr. Healy, them cracker meth head bitches won't let us change the channel. And it's our turn. I can't watch no more Tyler's and Tiara.
She wouldn't be coming in here talking to him about the TV room either. There's actually usually a few different TV rooms, and they are segregated, and so the blacks will have their own TV, and then the Spanish will have their own TV, and the whites will have their own TV, and then the others, which would be the like Asians and Islanders and maybe the Native Americans, if there's not enough of them, they'll all go into one group called the others, and they'll have their own TV. So generally all the TV situations are figured out within the groups that are controlling the TVs, and they don't involve the counselor.
God only knows the emotional toll it must take to be in here with that woman.
She is the least of my problems.
She's your entire problem, Piper. You'd be home trying on wedding dresses, growing your business, giving me grandchildren if it weren't for her. She stole all that from you.
Mom,
Yes.
I need you to hear what I'm going to say. I need you to really hear it.
When you have people visit, they start to want to blame your incarceration on other people. Mine personally, they were like, oh, well, these people did this and that, and that's why you're in prison. And I constantly was stopping people with something that I had to do for myself. I was constantly stopping people and said, you know what, like, I put myself in here. Let's not talk about what other people did that they shouldn't have done that made me go to prison. Let's talk about what I did. And it's something that I think it's an important part of the process, is for prisoners to take responsibility for what they did, because if they don't own it, if they let other people blame everyone else, then it's not as much of a learning experience.
I am in here because I am no different from anybody else in here.
And I haven't pre-watched this, so I didn't know she was going to say that, but like this, I had this conversation. That's why I knew she was going to say this.
I made bad choices. I committed a crime. And being in here is no one's fault but my own.
Honey, if that lawyer had done...
Howard.
So proper.
Sweetheart, you're nothing like any of these women.
That's the other thing that people don't. The other thing that people don't understand, the disconnect, is that everyone thinks that they're different, that they're special in prison. And that was something that I tried to get across to my visitors too. I didn't harp on this stuff that much. I tried to keep it real light, but I was the same as all of them. I was an inmate. I did something that put me in prison. I was sitting in prison. Whether you imagine me sitting in prison ever isn't the issue at hand here. Like, I'm here, and I deserve to be here. And the other people are here, and they deserve to be here. And I'm not different from them. They're not all these bad people who got thrown in prison because they're bad, and I'm good and I'm in prison. No, a lot of them were good and they're in prison. I'm kind of bad and I'm in prison. Like, there's not this like clear line that I'm different from everyone else. Like, we all got in prison. We're all kind of the same. We share a very common trait here. So trying to draw these hard lines and saying they're bad prisoners and you're a good prisoner, that's just not in reality how you feel and what the reality of the world is when you're in prison. And I guess it's probably emotional walls and things that family and friends need to throw up because of this concept of what they have, of what it means to be a criminal and a bad person and be in prison, and what the reality is that normal, caring, empathetic, loving people from your family might be in prison at some point, and they're no different from everyone else that's in prison. yes, there are absolutely officers who sneak contraband in, even if it's just small items, all the way up to drugs and some either more scandalous stuff. But it is more common than you would expect to have officers sneaking things in. You just imagine the amount of power and insight and availability for an officer to make money running contraband in prison. First of all, realize that correction officers is a semi-entry level position. It's not the it's not the highest tier of law enforcement, let's just say. So they're making whatever wages you're thinking, but it's a very middle class position. So they have the opportunity then to make thousands of dollars on the side by smuggling things into prison, and they know all of the security measures, they know how people get caught, they know how not to get caught. The motive and a very clear opportunity is there for these officers, and 99.9% of them are very above board. So this isn't saying anything bad about correctional officers and their moral compass, but when you have enough officers over time, they're definitely coming, like some of them definitely fall into the trap of sneaking things into prison for that extra money. It's human nature, and it's very realistic.
Well, after that visit, that's starting to sound appealing.
Look, don't say ungrateful crap like that around here. Your mother shows up, buys you pretzels. Poor you.
We all have our shit, Nikki.
Yeah. Some shit stinks worse than other shit, princess.
You don't know how my shit smells.
Sure I do. Your shit smells like Shalimar. Must have rubbed off when she hugged you goodbye. Hey, what a bitch.
This is one of the lessons that people really need to learn quickly in prison, and it's that you don't have a place to complain about anything, any of your life circumstance. When you're in prison, there's always someone that has it much worse than you. If you got 5 years, there's someone who got 10 years. If you got 10 years, there's someone who got 20 years. If you got 20, there's someone who got life. If your lawyer screwed you, someone was falsely imprisoned. None of it, people come from bad family lives, people come from bad life situations, people get screwed by the courts. So many things, there's so many stories in prison that if you share your sob story at any point, there's always something that's far worse, and it is a non-starter. It gets you nowhere ever. The only thing sharing your sob story ever does is make people angry at you and annoyed at you. And it's a small nuance, but it's something that I tell people when they're going to prison. Don't tell your story in any sort of victim role ever. Keep it short, brief, and get on with it. And that's why in prison you hear this theme of laugh now, cry later. It's not the time to get emotional when you're in prison. You can with yourself, but not with other people. You laugh, you keep it light, because we're all in the same boat.
Oh, baby. Hey, Mom.
Oh, what fucking slut? It's not worth it. Later, fucking bitch. Yo, respect your mother.
Why? She never acted like no mom.
That's dangerous, and not because of the physical danger here, but out in the middle of the yard like this, inmates generally, if they're going to slap someone or attack someone, generally you don't do it just out in the middle of the yard where you can be seen from 360 degrees. No telling who's watching. Another inmate could snitch on you. A cop could see you slap it. A cop could even walk by and see her laying on the ground and send people to the hole just because someone was laying on the ground. They were probably fighting. There isn't any burden of proof in prison for you to get sent to solitary confinement. Basically, if there's any information they want to find out, or if there's anything that they're questioning, they'll just put you in solitary confinement and figure it out later as you sit in there, and it sucks. So the point is, if you were going to slap someone, you wouldn't do it out in the middle of nowhere. You'd catch them in the bathroom, around a corner where there's no camera, and you'd slap them.
I'm going to bring back the Women's Advisory Council. The first election will be held this Saturday. In the meantime, don't bother me and simmer down.
You can only vote within your race or your group. Look, just pretend it's the 1950s. It makes it easier to understand.
See, everyone elects a representative from their own tribe. White, Black, Hispanic, Golden Girls, others. And then those 5 gals, they meet with Healy, they tell him what we want, then he speaks to the higher-ups. It's like student council.
This is similar to how things actually work in prison, except for I haven't seen officially elected officials like this. I haven't seen anything official. I guess it's possible maybe in women's prisons or ones that I haven't been to, but it does run like this. First, the groups are broken up by race, and there will be the races they listed. I don't know if there's a Golden Girls or any older person groups. I haven't seen that, but there is an others group, which the others is generally a group of races that aren't fully represented. So let's say there's not a lot of Asians and Native Americans and Islanders in a prison. They all come together in one group called the others. Then there's the Spanish, the blacks, and the whites, essentially. They can be broken down into subgroups, but that's how it goes. Each of those groups has a shot caller or a representative. In this case, it looks like they're actually voting and electing officials, but usually that just kind of happens organically. And then those shot callers are not only in charge of that group of people and kind of making general decisions on what they're going to be doing, but they also will have some sort of sway with the counselor. So the counselor will work with the shot callers and kind of take their advice and take what they say with a grain of salt in making decisions as far as what should happen at the prison. And a good example of this would just be bunk assignments. If a person wants to move from one bunk to another bunk, a lot of times the shot caller will look at all the moving pieces and see if that switch makes sense, and the counselor will ask the shot caller, hey, should we move this guy to this bed over here, or is it going to cause any problems? And the shot caller will say, yeah, go ahead and make that move, or the shot caller will say, no, stop that move because that's not going to work. So Nikki's in here talking to Red because she's angry that she didn't get the role as basically, we'll call it the shot caller for her group, and Red put this other person in the position of shot caller.
Why'd you choose Lorna to run for whacking at me?
You're questioning my decisions.
I thought it was like your VP.
Lorna is pretty and unthreatening. I like her lipstick. And she listens. The last thing you need is a public forum. You're already too multi for your own good.
Yeah, but...
So this actually has some reality to it about shot callers and their role and what they're like in prison. So shot callers aren't the biggest, scariest, most aggressive, dominant person a lot of the time. They can be, obviously, if they go and take some power by force. But a lot of times these shot callers are intellectual, they're good communicators, they are a good people person, they're good leaders, and they're good decision makers. And it's almost like a political leader. So it's a misconception that sometimes that the shot caller is the most dangerous person on the yard. A lot of the time, the shot caller is the most sociable person on the yard.
Gosh, this prize sure beats the heck out of a decoder ring.
So a lot of the times officers will know where contraband is or know how it's coming in, but they'll let it slide for two reasons. One, they don't really want a bunch of extra work if the contraband's not something dangerous. Also, they want to give some sort of benefit to the inmates that work for them. So let's say a kitchen cop may let some contraband food or spices come in because they want to make the inmates happy. And then third, when they kind of know where that contraband is and it's coming in, they can monitor it and make sure it's PC, like there's no heroin coming in, let's say, but there is tomatoes coming in. Okay, that's fine, no big deal. The officers will then kind of watch it and monitor. That gives them the power to cut it off or to use it as leverage to manipulate the inmates by taking it away.
You bringing in cell phones too?
What are you talking about?
Someone smuggled in a phone. No, it's getting in the way of my business. I don't like competition, sweet cheeks.
I didn't directly see any officers smuggling anything in ever or running some sort of business like this. To me, this seems this officer runs his operation very straightforward and in your face, and that's movie magic. Officers would not be, if they're doing dirt like this guy, aren't going to be confronting inmates so often and putting it out there and using these giant power plays. I think they'd be more flying under the radar and being a little bit more subtle about their operation, and definitely not putting their operation in front of more than one or two inmates. This officer tends to confront people in front of other people, like Red here. It's cool if he was just talking to Red, but there's someone in the background. Nikki's watching and hearing all of this as well. Rumors are so rampant in prison that if there was an officer who was smuggling contraband or part of an operation like this, and he was just recklessly approaching people like this officer does, he would be outed within days. The other thing to understand about prison is that there's eyes everywhere, and those eyes are everywhere, especially on officers. Because if someone comes up with a piece of information, especially like this officer smuggling drugs in, and I have proof, they can get time off their prison sentence. So people are looking. There is people in prison looking for information to get other people in trouble so that they can get out of prison early.
We understand each other, don't we?
I think so.
I mean, I agree. I think the two of us working together, we could really turn some things around, or at the very least, make things a little quieter.
This actually happens, maybe not this straightforward, but these counselors and officers want to build relationships, and they have favorite inmates that come in their office, and they use that as a control mechanism for the rest of the prison population. They get some information from those inmates, but also sometimes they're not necessarily looking for people to snitch. They're just looking for the general feel and the general tone, like feedback. What's going right? What's going wrong? What can make things go smoother? And they like to have inmates who are kind of out there with those feelers out. And so you'll see these inmates who hang out in the officer's or the counselor's office often, like Chapman tends to be in this office a lot of the time in this show, which makes her one of those inmates. So two things are going to happen. People will notice that Chapman's in the office here because she's not laying low. This wouldn't be considered laying low. And also the officer is going to continue to lean on her more and more and more over time. I don't like the situation Chapman's putting herself in. I was all about staying out of drama and out of the officer's sight and out of the inmate's sight. Just keep it low pro. But it's a movie, so Chapman's going to make it interesting here. But
You want me to run for whack?
We don't get ladies as bright as yourself in here often.
Thank you, Mr. Healy. I appreciate that. I really do. But I'm trying this new thing where I stay out of the spotlight. I think that it's a better bet for me.
I'm giving you a chance to make your time count, Chapman.
this is a good move by Chapman. It's definitely don't want to be a shot caller or whatever voted position that she's getting into. It's going to be much smoother if she stays out of the way. So hopefully she sticks to her guns here.
Thank you, but I need to politely decline.
Well, I'm disappointed. It's certainly not like I can force you to run anyway, right?
Yeah, there's always things hidden in bathroom stalls in the most creative areas, and this is a very likely situation that a cell phone would be in a bathroom. A lot of times they're in shower stalls, hidden behind like a soap tray or in some sort of really creative spot. You could take maybe unscrew the drain. And I've seen it get crazy like this. I haven't seen it get crazy like
Are we supposed to lie down, Mr. Healy?
Actually, he wants me to write another article.
Really?
Yeah, he thought I should write about you, about our experience.
So, blogging from prison is common and a little bit dangerous. So, people blog from prison because they want to tell their story. A lot of people have really interesting stories to tell, and they use it as a way to maybe communicate with their friends and family in a written form. But there's dangers that come along with blogging from prison. So the problem is you're putting this information, you're putting personal, timely information about the inside of the workings of a prison, and you better bet that the prison is following every word that you write. There's someone reading that. If you're putting anything illegal that you did in there, you're going to get in trouble. If you are talking about officers and some shady prison operations, there's always shady operations going on in prison, and if you're bringing those to light while you're still in prison, you are going to get in trouble. If you're writing about people on the outside who have some sort of influence, they can either have people in prison approach you and take your blog down, or if they know the prison officials, they can have the prison officials put pressure on you to take the blog down. So there's all kinds of things that can happen if you're trying to tell your story from prison while you're still in prison, and it puts you in a sketchy spot. So if you know anyone in prison who is blogging, tell them to get all their blogs written. And I mean, this is everyone's situation. I would recommend get your blogs written and then put it after you're out of prison. I directly saw someone get sent to the hole for a blog, and he had a really interesting situation. So he had robbed the Russian mob of $10 million, and not the Russian mob directly. This guy who was a billionaire, he worked as a personal assistant for, and he funneled $10 million out of this dude's account and almost got away with it. But then he got addicted to pills, and he went back for another $10 million, and when he did that, he got caught. The guy lost $20 million to this con artist, and the guy was so rich the $20 million didn't mean anything to him, but what did mean something to him was someone ripping him off. So he went hard on this guy. He got him extradited to the US and got him basically thrown into prison. And so this guy starts blogging about the Russian mob. Well, the Russian mob clearly has connections to US government, and they hit up basically the prison system and hit up the warden and said, hey, you've got a guy blogging in there that's causing a bunch of problems, like do something about it. They came and they literally took this dude and put him in solitary confinement. He was there for a month, and when he came out, he wouldn't talk about his blog, and he shut it down. It was called Diary of a Wimpy Con. You might be able to look up Diary of a Wimpy Con now, but it got him in trouble when he was in prison. It's a sketchy situation. So Chapman is getting into some interesting territory here when her fiance is going to start telling her story. If she starts giving inside information, she's going to put herself in a bad spot.
Could you just give me a little bit of time to figure out how I feel about you writing an article about me being in here?
Of course, you need to process. I should respect that. Take some time.
I'm just not sure if I'm ready to be Piper Chapman, the convict fiance. But as soon as you write an article, it will all be so, public.
I hear you.
At some point you make this decision, like, am I going to kind of bury this in my past, now that it's happened 10, 15 years ago? Can I bury this and never bring it up and not worry about it again? Or do I talk about it so much that it's not a big deal? I took the former, clearly. I'm trying to just embrace who I am, what I'm all about, and my checkered past, and put a good foot forward as good as I can in good faith, and just put it all out there, and hopefully that works out. But who knows? This is the decision that people who have been to prison have to make. At one point, is it just gone? It's kind of like it's never gone. It's always there. It's part of your history, and so I take the approach of just embracing it, and this is who I am. I do some crazy stuff sometimes, but I learn my lesson. I get better. So Chapman has to wrestle with that. Everyone has to wrestle with that who has a permanent federal felony on their record. These things never go away. You can make a mistake when you're 18. You can be 48, and people will still talk about your felony if you go to a job interview or anything like that.
This isn't about giving them power. This is about your mother telling you could take a bath before dinner or after. You were still gonna get wet, but you thought you had a choice.
Good way to put it.
I have no fucking idea what that means. But I do know, you just basically built the prison as union.
Your elected WAC leaders are Maria Ruiz, Jefferson, representing both the others and the Golden Girl. And Chapman.
It looks like Chapman has been forced into the leadership position by Healy, the counselor, even though the inmates didn't vote her in. And I've actually seen this happen as well. When I was in RDAP, which is a structured program to get time off in prison, you basically go through a one-year rehab program. They have leadership positions like this. The inmates kind of vote, but what really happens is the counselors come together and they hand select inmates that they want to work with in the program and force them into positions of power exactly like this. Let's go ahead and look into the grading this episode. There's three things we're looking at here. One, there is a lot of cell phones in prison, and it does happen that things get online and the prison investigates where those came from. Secondly, there are representatives in prison. Sometimes they're elected by the inmates, sometimes they're forced into a position of power by the counselor so they have someone to work with, so that happens as well. The detractor in this episode, the thing that wasn't realistic, is this contraband running by the officers. While it does happen that officers run contraband, they do it on the down low. They're not openly confronting people and they are very sly about it. There is a lot of movie magic into how they have this officer kind of openly and aggressively running contraband. You don't see that happen as often because there's too many snitches in prison for that to happen. So this episode I'm going to give a B+. So what'd you think of my grade? Let me know in the comments and let me know anything else that you'd like to see. If you'd like to see more Prisoner React videos, you can check out the playlist here. If you're actually going to federal prison, I made a step-by-step guide how to survive prison. That's what most of this is for, so check that out here. Until next time, this is federalprisoninsider.com.